Hey designer friends, as some of you might know, we have launched a new web design course this week, and what a better way to show you the quality of our teaching than just giving you a video to show you how we teach and see if you like it and how you feel about it. So in this video, I want to share with you our video on content strategy and information architecture. This is a really important topic and part of the process. When you're doing a website, you have to gather information, you have to decide what content is actually going to be on the website and how we're going to structure it. So we're going to dive a lot into user experience and how to structure content in the right way so that it makes sense for the user. Crucial part of the process. And as I said, this is just one step in the whole web design process. So I hope you like this and benefit a lot from this video. If you like it and if you want to dive deeper into the web design process, please check out our full course, Web Design Becoming a Professional. Because we're launching it this week, there's also a lunch week promo. So there's an early bird pricing up until Friday. So the link to the full-on course is below. Anyway, enjoy this video and I'll see you next time. Hey, and welcome to the content module. In this video, we're actually going to cover two things, which are content strategy and information architecture. So we're going to cover what are the difference between them and then how to work to build the content for your website. So we're going to talk about content planning and then how to develop the actual content. Then of course, I'll show you a demo and then we'll wrap it up. So let's start by exploring these two things that I've mentioned. Content strategy and information architecture. Well, basically, content strategy answers the question, what content should we even have on our website? Is it aligned with the overall strategy that we have for the website? And then information architecture basically says, how are we going to structure that content that we've decided on? What would be the right structure for the content inside of the website? So let's dive into these topics. The first step is, of course, planning, right? Making the decision about what is the content and then actually developing and creating the content. So what is the content planning process? Well, the first step this is going to be a dialogue together with your clients, like most things in your web design process. But before you go ahead and have this discussion with your clients, I do suggest you do the prep before. So you already have done the research, you're familiar with their goals, you are familiar with what's accepted and what other competitors are doing, so what is accepted in the marketplace from that type of website. So you can come up with the list of content types that you think should be on the website. I suggest you always come to the meeting prepared with your own suggestions instead of just asking the client, so what do you think we should have on the website? So whether that is a page to cover or a page or sections to cover products or services, or who the company is, what their vision is, what do they do, contact of course, but maybe benefits, maybe resources, updates, all of these types of different contents that are possible on different websites. Come up with the list that you think would make sense just as a starting point for that website. The second step would be to take that list and then sit down with your clients, have a brainstorm and have a discussion about this. Tell them, here's what I think. What do you think? Is there anything that's missing here? Is there anything that is important to you that you want to make sure that we have? Is there any kind of SEO considerations that are important to you and that we might put in specific content so we would rank higher for specific keywords? Is there any specific tone maybe that you'd like us to take in terms of how we develop the content? That is the conversation where you want to list out and just flash out all the different ideas for content that's going to be on the website. Now, basically at the end of this phase, you'll have just a list of a lot of things, right? Just a lot of things. And then the next step is doing some kind of a sorting and grouping to understand what would make sense, how you want to put them together. Now, there is a very famous and actually useful kind of UX workshop or exercise that you can do with your client, and it's called cart sorting. Basically, what that means, of course, that can be done online with many different tools, or of course, physically if you're sitting with them. But the idea here is that you put each one of these ideas for a content type on a sticky note, and then you end up with a bunch of sticky notes, and then you start grouping them together. And you ask yourself, what would make sense? Of course, maybe something like showing the team and the executives and the vision would make sense under a title that's called About Us. Maybe all of these different topics make sense under a title that is called Services. So as you can see, this is the beginning of some kind of a structure that would resemble perhaps either pages on the website or at least sections in the website, but it kind of helps to make sense out of the content and puts what's worth doing together or what's worth putting together. And one thing that is very important and useful in this exercise is understanding what is the title of the group, right? That's probably going to be, again, either the page name and or the section name, and that is very important for people to orient themselves. So this exercise is actually the transition between the content strategy and content architecture, because as you understand, now we're trying to start architecting. We're starting to place things together. So this is the time where I want to dive deeper into the structure of the content, the information architecture. Now, why do we even use this term architecture when it comes to web design? It's because we're eventually organizing a space, right? It's not a physical space, but it's an online space. But check out these two examples, right? When you think about an office, if that office is, open space, or if that office is divided by cubicles, that really affects, one, how people feel when they're working in that space, two, how people interact in that space. So in the open space, calls for a more collaboration and, talking with other people who are sitting in front of you, where, the cubicles allow you for more silence and focus and, working with yourself. So the way that you divide the space really affects how people are going to use the space. So it matters how we divide the space of the website as well. Now, one more thing about the space is that one space, for example, a marketplace, can be very, very confusing and disorienting versus a space like the airport, where it doesn't matter almost where you are in the world or how big the airport is, you know how to orient yourself in an airport, mainly because it uses expectations that people understand how airports work and they all function the same way. And then it has a really good signage and everybody understands that signage. Now we want to use the same principles of working with people's expectations and using good signage. And again, I've mentioned earlier that it really matters how you label the pages or the groups, because that helps people orient in that space. So hopefully we're going to design something more like of an airport where people know how to orient themselves versus a confusing market. Now, the tool that we use for structuring and actually communicating the structure is called a sitemap, and usually it would look like something like this. This is, as you can see, it's kind of like a little bit more fancy illustration of the same card sorting thing, but here you can more visually and easily see the hierarchy, and the structure. So what is on top of what leads to what, and it's really easy to see the structure of the overall website. Now, this is, again, you can do this with any design software that you want. However, this is a fancy way of doing this. There's also the non-fancy way of doing this, which is just using tabs to show hierarchy. And that's usually how we communicate with written documents. When you have tabs and sub-tabs or bullets and sub-bullets, which are available, by the way, in any word processing, Google Doc type of software. And a lot of times, actually, when I would be working together with my clients and collaborating with them on real time, working on something like a Google Doc where we can just copy and paste and move things around and tab things to create that structure is actually faster than creating the fancy diagram. So it doesn't matter. You might start with during the brainstorming session to create kind of a fast on the road structure using tabs, and then maybe you want to for documentation and approval and communication, just to clarify how things will look like, create a nicer sitemap. But those are the tools that we're talking about when we want to communicate the structure of the website. So as I've mentioned, the labeling on the sitemap matters because those are the actual signs, kind of like the airport. So you want to make sure that they are clear. And also, whether you write about us or the company or who we are, it matters to both clarity in terms of understanding what's the content in this page. It also matters from, a branding perspective and tone perspective, how people feel about this. So make sure you pay attention to the labels. Now, I want to explore some kind of very popular structures that you might consider using when you're doing your site mapping and structuring phase. So one of the simplest one, but a very, very popular one, is just one page, right? It's a home page, it's a single page. Sometimes it's also called a one-pager. It's just all of the content in one page, and we'll explore pros and cons of using them soon. And the second simple one is a flat structure. And a flat structure basically means you have a page. The only thing that you can do from here is going to a different page, in kind of a sequence. But from that page, you can't go to any other pages. The only thing you can do from that page is go back into the home page or back into the main page. Now, why is this useful? You might ask yourself. Well, in some scenarios, I imagine like a checkout process, you want people to be focused and you want them only to move into the next step. You don't want them to be confused and go check out completely different pages right now. Of course, people can always use the back in the browser to go back to the home page or where they came from, but you want them to stay focused and you want to guide them towards the next step. Now, the third one is called an index page. This is probably the most popular structure that you know. You have a home page, and that home page links to all of the other pages available on the website. So that is super, super popular. When you get into more complex website, you get into what we call strict hierarchy pattern, which means you have a page. Let's say you have a blog page, and then under the blog page, you have maybe individual blog posts. And so you go down hierarchy, you have sub pages of a category. Now, on some types of website like e-commerce, sometimes you would have what we call coexisting hierarchy pattern. And that basically means that you can move around between the sub pages without going back into the home page. So if you're on Amazon, for example, and you're watching a product, you can jump from that product into a different product, sometimes even if that different product is on a different category. So those are kind of links. This is the most complex scenarios. It's not going to happen to you often, but I want you to be familiar with the concept of actually connecting different categories and different subcategories, because that is, of course, possible. Now, I want to dive a little deeper into the difference between, or the consideration, just because one-pagers are so popular these days, I want to help you consider what would be the best for the particular scenario that you're designing for, whether it should be a one-pager or multiple pages in a more complex scenario. Obviously, everything has pros and cons. So let's start with the one-pager. One-pager, the good thing about a one-pager is the only thing you can do is scroll. So that means it's a very, very intuitive user journey, right? You start at the beginning, you scroll to the middle, and then you get to the end. So it's very, very easy to use. They're not going to get distracted. And you can include all of the information that you want people to know and consume in order to make a decision, right? So you can make sure that they can't jump into and they can't miss something, right? So you can teach them, or you can have them explore the content in the order that you think would be best for them, which also probably is going to increase conversion rates. People are not confused. They don't have anything else to do but explore the whole process and then get to the end, which is you telling them what to do next. That's probably the conversions. So in that sense, a one-pager is a great solution. Now, the cons of that is, of course, it's not very scalable, right? You can't put tons and tons and tons of content. There's always going to be a limit, and you don't want to overwhelm in one page. So if you have tons of content, that might not be the right solution. The other thing is that in terms of, thinking about SEO or analytics, when you only have one page, it's hard to really know what people are interested in. When you have different pages, first of all, those different pages can rank for specific keywords, right? If you have a product that is called orange juice and you create a page that's called orange juice, so when people Google for orange juice, they're gonna get to that specific product page versus your homepage, which is probably a beverage company, right? So when you have a dedicated page, it's easier to rank for keywords. And then the second thing, when you have, let's say, 100 products and you want to know which product is popular, when you have a lot of pages, you can very quickly see in analytics which pages get more visits. But when you have only one page, it's a little bit harder to know. You still have tracking devices where you can see, what part of the page people scrolled into, but it's a little bit deeper to really understand what's going on when you only have a one page. So multi-pages, of course, the benefits, just like the opposite of what we mentioned right now, it's unlimited scalability. So if you have a huge website, if you have tons of content, if you have a lot of products, a lot of services, you must have a lot of pages to explore them. It's easier to link to specific concept, specific product, because you have a dedicated page to it. So you can just send somebody the link to it, and it's much easier. And as we said, it's better for SEO, better for analytics. The con of using a lot of pages is that it's going to be harder to maintain, right? You have a lot of more content. You have to work through each page every time you need to update something. People might get confused because there's so much going on. You need a more elaborate navigation. And you have to remember that now that the page has multiple pages, each one of these pages, because it can be shared, is now actually an entry point to the website. So people might not land on the homepage. You designed the homepage to be clear, talking about what the company does, but imagine people are landing on the blog. Imagine people are landing on a specific product page. Will they understand what the company actually does? That gets a little bit more tricky and requires a little bit more thoughts when you have multiple pages. Okay, now that we've covered the high-level structure of the website, let's dive deeper into some of the most common components that you'll have to design for in terms of information on the website and see what are the best practices for them. So first of all, I want to dive deeper into the homepage, because a homepage is basically a component that you'll see in basically every website. So the purpose of the homepage is to basically answer the simple question of, who are these people? What do they do? And why would I care? And once you've established that, you want to use the homepage to build trust with the company or with the brand so that you actually believe them and want to work with them. And the other reason that people might visit the homepage is if they have been working with the business before and if they already know what is it about, they usually would revisit it just to see if there's anything new or if anything has changed. So let me show you basically a typical structure of how you would structure a homepage. You would start with the top section, which we call a hero section. And in that section, you'll probably have something like the logo and navigation, which is a typical component. We'll dive into all of these components soon. And then you'll have a value proposition and probably a primary call to action to achieve the goal of the website. And then we'll move into the secondary sections where we'll try to build trust. We'll do that with components like testimonials or logo bar or any other measures that we can use to build social proof, number, anything else that we can generate to create social proof. We'll use the follow-up sections to showcase the benefits of the company, of working with the company or the product, and any features we want to cover. And then we'll use the additional sections in the homepage to show what is new. So either new content from something like a blog or something like this, or if we have any updates, news, or any kind of new offers that we have, if we want them to sign them up for a list or give them something for free in exchange for their email, we will do that in those sections, and we'll always end up with a footer. Now let's dive deeper into some of these components to see how we're going to use them. So just before I continue, one thing I want to note about the homepage. You have to remember, not everybody is going to start with the homepage. We've mentioned that previously. Some people would just start from a specific product page or a blog post or something like that. So you have to consider that some people might start elsewhere and then come to the homepage because they want to learn more. And the other thing is, the homepage a lot of times is the war in terms of the company, because everybody wants to put their foot in there, right? If there's somebody who works on a product or initiative in the company, they were like, we have to put this on the homepage. And a lot of people think that you can put everything, cram everything into the homepage. So do not do that. Remember what the purpose of the homepage is in terms of establishing trust, showing the overview of the product, services, and benefits, and don't try to do too much. Rather, if you have a lot of information, put it on another page and link to it. All right, let's dive into the navigation. And the navigation is something that we'll have at the top of the website. You'll see that in any website at all. And the purpose of that is to actually understand where you are, also understand who owns this website, which is why you'll see a logo in that almost always, or actually always. It helps you to discover what is actually the main information in this website. So we would show you with links, and actually by giving you those important links, it actually teaches you what you can do in this website. And a lot of times that is optional, but a lot of times we'll also have a call to action that is persistent. As we scroll, we always have this call to action button with us to achieve the main purpose of the goal. So some best practices to work with. Most times you'll see logo on the top left, and that is because, as people who read books, we always start at the top left corner. That is our general reading pattern. We start at the top left if we're reading English. And so that is where we position usually the logos. That will be the first time that we will see it, the first thing that we will see. Sometimes some brands put it in the center, and that can work as well. But you have to remember that people start reading at the top left, and that's why we use that for the logo. Most times, it's also kind of a best practice, or a lot of times users expect that logo is also a link to the homepage. So no matter where people are on the website, they expect that if they will click on the logo at the top left, it will take them back into the homepage. Now, in terms of navigation link, as we've said earlier, that kind of shows you the main structure of the website and what you can do here, but you want to make sure that you don't put more than 5 to 7 links. The reason for that is just, the cognitive memory load that we have in our brains. We can't remember more than 7 items at the same time. We can't hold them in our memory. So if we put too many links there, by the time that we go through reading everything that's on this website, we actually forgot what's in here. So you want to make sure, and that is a lot of times, just like we said on the homepage, everybody wants, we have to have this in the navigation, we have to have this on the homepage. This is something that you have to work with your clients to prioritize, just because if you put everything there, it might be overwhelming. Now, if this is a heavy content website, if they have a lot of products, what you would do a lot of times is just collect a lot of information under a category or a menu, and then you would have like a drop-down menu that you can either hover or click, and you can see more information. But you want to make that discoverable. You don't want to show everything up front. You want to make people understand that they can hover or click this to see more on that topic. Now, as we said, people read from the top left to the right. So you have to understand that they will start reading from the left link to the right link. So you want to organize those links by order of importance, right? Because they will most likely read the left first. I don't know if they'll get all through the end. So make sure you put the one on the left, the one that is most important for you. And you also want to make sure in terms of design that you want to highlight the current page. So sometimes you would see things like phone number or, chat or support or that kind of stuff also in the navigation bar, but I want you to understand that this is actually not a navigation, right? It doesn't help you navigate elsewhere. This is actually what we call a utility bar. These are just very important functions that we want to highlight. That being said, because this is not a navigation, this doesn't take you somewhere else, you want to separate them, at least visually, and usually this is done by just putting them in a different line on top or below the actual navigation, just so people understand that these are different things and these can help you achieve, different functions. All right. In very big websites or complex website where you have things like categories, you would work with something that's called global navigation and local navigation. So a global navigation is basically the main navigation that we just talked about. It's those 5 to 7 links that basically show you the structure of the whole website, and they're with you on any page on the website. They're consistent with you. However, when you are in a specific category that has a lot of pages with it, or maybe it's just a very long page that has section with it, sometimes we'll use something that's called local navigation. And in this example, we're seeing the Apple website. And when you're in a category, for example, in the top example, we're in the page for the iPhone. So we chose in the global navigation, we chose the iPhone, and then we're getting a local navigation to show you the different pages within the iPhone category. And even when we are inside a specific iPhone, let's say on the bottom, in the bottom example, when we are in a page for the iPhone X, for example, we will have a local navigation specifically to the sections of this page, including a persistent call to action to buy the iPhone. Now, as I've mentioned, you want to make sure that the page that you're on right now is highlighted. It might be a little bit hard to see here, but it's a little bit of a different color, the page that we're on right now, just so we understand very fast what page are we on if we just landed here. But also it's very important, and you can see it in those examples, the name of the page is also very prominent in the title at the top of the page. But as you scroll down, that might not be visible. So you want to make kind of like a double effort just to make sure that people are clear on what page they are on. Now, again, in complex websites, we will use something that's called breadcrumbs. And breadcrumbs, you can see them here actually not in the hero section, but below it. It's where you can see home, art technologies, and sensing. When you are inside of an inner page, when you have categories and then you have sub pages in those categories, you might not be able to see where you are because the global navigation doesn't include link to this page. And so people might be disoriented and we can't highlight in the navigation where they are right now. So they might not remember what page, or understand what page they are on right now. And so using a component like the breadcrumb helps the user to understand the structure of the website, where they are on the map. And if they want, they can go back to the previous top page. In this case, it's art technology, and just go back there. Now, one question that a lot of people think about, they're not sure, should we have a search function? Search function a lot of times comes in the navigation because the purpose of the search is to navigate to a specific piece of content. Now, there is no simple yes/no answer to that, like a lot of things. It really depends on how much content you have on your site. So if you have a lot of pages, and that can be just because you have a blog or because you have multiple products or subcategories like we've mentioned, it might not be easy to find what you're looking for if you have to start going into sub menus and drop down menus and you're not really sure even where to look for that thing. In that case, it might be a good idea to add a search function. But again, you have to consider how hard it is to find the information. If they have to go look for it, it might make sense to add a search function. But if you can just give them a very simple or a simpler way to find that information just from the top nav or from somewhere else, then you might not need a search function. All right, let's talk about the hero section. So the hero section, as we've mentioned, this is the top section of the website when you're landing on a page, right? Now, usually that's where you'll give the value proposition of what's in this page, right? Now, in the homepage specifically, this is a specific use of the hero section, because in the homepage, actually in any page where people land for the first time, they have a very short attention span. Actually, most people would leave the website within the first 15 seconds. And that's why we have something called the 15 seconds rule, where we try to convey the basic, who is this, who owns this website, what do they do, and why should I even care about this? We try to cram all of this information to make it super fast and accessible so people can answer that question within the first 15 seconds, and then they want to stay with us and explore deeper. And so you want to make sure that you answer these questions. You want to make sure that you have a very clear value proposition. And additionally, you want to consider adding a call to action in that hero section, just to let people know what they can accomplish here and encourage them to action. Here's an example from the Stripe website. So first of all, you can see they answer the first question, who owns this place? What is this website? With the logo at the top left, it's also kind of isolated, so it's very easy for your eye to very simply go there and understand, okay, this is a company called Stripe. Next, what do they do? Very clear, big title. This is payments infrastructure for the internet. That's great. Why should I care? This is the next. You answer them in a row. Why should I care? Oh, millions of businesses of all size use this. This is also kind of like a social proof, right? A lot of people are using this. So now they're trying to make you care about this, and start now. This is their call to action. So this is an example of a very good hero section. Of course, besides the textual information, also uses visual to very fast convey the world which they're in. They're in payments, so you very clearly see a dashboard of money and a checkout process. People can instantly, by looking at this, understand they are in payments. You can do a checkout with them. You can get a dashboard to see how much money you make. Very, very fast. You know what this website is about. All right, the next component that we'll talk about is the testimonial. You're probably very familiar with it. In essence, this is a text blurb of something that somebody said about this person, about this business, about this experience, and it generates trust. And that is just because we as people believe other people. And so we always use this to build trust. It also helps to show who the business clients are, because a lot of times you would want to buy from people who are like you. So when you see this person from that company, you can say, oh, they are like me. We have similar problems. And therefore, if this person had a good experience with that company, that's probably going to be a good fit for me. And it also allows you to understand what is the benefit of this product. It gives you kind of more value proposition into why this is a good product, company, service to work with. So some notes about testimonials. Of course, you want to make them short and snappy, just because people don't take a lot of time to read on the internet. You want to make sure to add a photo and the title or the company, or who is this person? Why should we believe him? People relate to photos very naturally. They like faces. They like to see the person, and it makes them way more reliable. And again, if you see the title and the company, this helps you relate. This person is like me. Sometimes using just things like tweets or testimonial from social media is very, very credible, because unlike just text, which you can go ahead and edit and make them look good, so stuff that you brought on from social media, that it was published by them that way, and so they are way more credible and they look a lot more natural. And of course, if you get a chance to create video testimonials, that is the highest level of credibility, just because, of course, they can't be faked or manipulated, but also people understand the effort it takes to get other people to give testimonials on video. So if this person works so hard to give them a video testimonial, that also creates a very high trust factor. Now, the next component, also in the trust area of your website, will be a logo bar. That is a very common component. You've probably seen it in so many websites. And in essence, that purpose is kind of like a testimonial, but you don't have basically to have their permission, right? But the idea here is that just by showing a logo of an organization, by associating your business with that other organization, which also has probably a trust factor, you're going to be associated with them, therefore you're going to be trustworthy. And you can use logos for the business's clients, but you can also use logos for publications or awards. Any credible organization that you can associate your business or your client's business with will contribute to, gaining trust. Now, one thing in terms of design, and that's an error that I see a lot, logos of different companies come in different sizes, different compositions, different colors, and if you just put them one next to another, it's going to be a mess in terms of hierarchy. Some of them are going to grab more attention, some of them are going to be grab less attention. And when you're using that logo bar, you want that whole logo bar to be one element with one kind of hierarchy, one hierarchy. And so the best practice and the best way to achieve that is to kind of flatten the color, take out the color. Of course, it doesn't have to be gray. It can also be black. It can also be white, depending on the context of the website. But you want to remove the color factor just to make all the logos look consistent. And sometimes you would even have to change their sizes just so that, because if you will do all of them in the same size, some of them might use more color than others, and therefore they will become more visually prominent. And so you want to scale them up just to make sure that you have a consistent hierarchy. All right, the next component is a pricing table. Almost any website that sells something, any business that sells something has a price they want to communicate. Most time they will do it within a multiple pricing tiers, because there's either different products, different service tiers. And so here's how we're going to showcase that. People, when they have a lot of options, they would like to compare them. And so a good way to present that is to just put them one next to another and show the differences or the features of each one of these programs so that people can easily compare them. Now, one thing that is very, very common, and I'll explain the reason, is emphasizing one of the programs or one of the tiers, not necessarily the most expensive one, but the one that the business would like to promote the most. The reason for this, the psychological reason for this, is because when people have too many options, they get lost and they get confused. And so when we make a suggestion for them, that would make it way more likely for them to actually go ahead and pick that pricing tier. Again, that is a good way for you to promote the offer that you would like to promote the most. Now, sometimes you would have to dive into a very, very long feature list if you have a very, very complicated project. However, you want, as a default, show a very concise list of features or differences just to make it easier on them. If they want to dive deeper, again, make it kind of like discretionary, hide it, or they can click to learn more to dive deeper if there's a reason to dive deeper. But if not, just make it easy for them to scan the features list by using a concise list. And you want to make sure that you're using prominent call to action on the tables. It has to be very easy to choose one of them, and you'll do that by making the buttons obviously very clear, like you would for any call to action. All right, when a company sells a product, you will have a product page. Whether that is an e-commerce website or you're selling a service, you will usually have a product page to explain that. And so let's cover some of the aspects in it. Usually, if that's a physical product, you would want to have a very prominent image just showcasing what that thing is. And actually, in most scenarios, you'd want to show more than one image just to show how does it look from different angles in different use cases and so on. Of course, you want to make sure that the title and the price are very clear, and also what is this thing, right? What are the descriptions? What are the features of that thing? You'd also want to add a prominent call to action so people can say, yes, I want this, I want to buy this. And when possible, you want to add social proof just to make sure that this product, gain trust. Again, we want to gain trust. If we can prove that this product good, that this product works, we can do this by reviews or any other social proof mechanism that we can have, like gazillion units sold or 5 points reviews and so forth. This will contribute into social proof and gaining trust. And lastly, if this product has customization options, you want to show these. Below that kind of like hero section of the product page, you can elaborate deeper into the features and the stories. And a lot of times buying one product is part of an experience of buying multiple products on a website. And so at the end of the page, you'll want to make suggestions for, if you like this, maybe you'll also like this. And that way you can increase the value, what's called average order value, right? If people buy more, the business makes more money and so becomes more successful. So you want to make more suggestions. And like a lot of things, when people make purchase consideration, a lot of times they have questions. So make sure that the support or help is easily available. After people purchase something, or in order for you to purchase something, they have to go through a checkout page. Now, the flow for checkout is usually something like you enter the shipping information, the billing information, you'll get one more chance to review your order, then you'll make a payment, and then you get into a confirmation page. There's some best practices, but which I'll cover right now, but I do encourage you when you're making checkout pages, the design and the best practices for checkout pages and e-commerce in general are constantly changing because people are testing and A/B testing and the technologies are changing all the time. So I do recommend going back to the research phase to do your research in terms of best practices for checkout page. But I'll just say shortly, of course, you want to only ask for the necessary information because you want to decrease steps and make decreasing steps will most likely increase conversions. You want to minimize the distractions and options for them to make it to say, oh, let me check something else. So a lot of times in checkout processes, you'll see that the navigation bar is actually either totally different or is totally gone because you want people to be focused on where we are, that you don't want them to go check out something else if you want them to complete the checkout process. A lot of payment methods usually also increase conversions, and you want to make sure that everything is clear and visible, and you want to also design for error handling, right? What if they put a different, a wrong card number? What if they didn't put their name? How did those errors look like? Which is also something that we'll talk about when we'll talk about forms. And let's talk about forms. So forms, as you know them, is people fill in information and submit it. A checkout process is just one use case of forms, but we'll use them also for contact forms. We'll also use them when people want to sign up for a newsletter or download a resource or something like that. Now, some guidelines in terms of forms. First of all, you have to use a label, right? And a label basically means, what is this form? You want to put the label on the top left corner of the field, and that's because that's the easiest way for people to scan the form. If you put it to the left of the box, their eye has to kind of jiggle all over the place, and a lot of usability researchers have determined that it's the easiest to read when it's on the top left of the corner. Why do you have to use a label? You have to consider for accessibility, right? If a lot of times people would use the placeholder text inside the form to say first name or email or something like that, but you have to remember that some people are using website readers and stuff like that, and once you get started writing there, that information is lost. So the best practice is always to use a label and put it at the top left of the form label. Then one thing that you should also consider is what's actually on the submit button. Now, on the example on the right, it's actually a little bit hard to see because it's super small. But on the left one, it just says sign up on the button. And on the right side, it says sign up and get a free delivery tips or something like that. When they've put the value proposition on the button, they've tested this and they've seen 30% more signups. And so you want to try and make this button valuable, right? Understand what you'll get when you'll fill out this information. So again, make it as short as possible. That will increase the chances of somebody actually submitting it. Put the labels on the top left, always display them, give them a good reason to submit, and use placeholders just to give them an example of what kind of text needs to go in here. This is specifically true when you're doing something like phone numbers. Do you need to format them in a specific way? Credit card information, the same. Do I put all the numbers here? Do I have to use dashes? Something like this. When you put a placeholder, that teaches people how to use that field. All right, the next topic is the content page. And content page, sometimes it's going to be a full-on page of its own. Sometimes it's going to be just a section in your website. But this is super, super important. And you want to make sure that it's very, very easy to find the contact page. One of the top reasons somebody goes into a business website is because they want to tell something or they need help from specific people. And so that is one of the most common uses. So you want to make it very, very easy to find where is the information, how do I contact these people. Now, if you're going to use a form, a submit form, just like we talked, you want to make sure that it's short. That being said, some people hate forms. And so always make sure that you also give them a direct email link so they can email you from their own email client. Or depending on the business, you want to give them a phone number where they can just contact you. Now, sometimes a business, especially as businesses grow, they're trying to decrease the workload of people calling in on them and sending them emails. So they would actually put in the contact page some additional information such as help centers and FAQ, and they will try to anticipate what questions do they usually get on in terms of support, and they just put that information there already, sometimes as a different, help or knowledge-based page. Sometimes they can put it on the contact page, and that just helps to save up on support tickets. Now, depending on the business, if this is a shop, if this business has branches, sometimes you would like to include the address. Sometimes you would like to include a map if you want people to show up at your business. That really depends on the type of business. Now, the last component that we'll talk about is the footer. You're probably familiar. The footer is the thing that's at the end of every website. Now, the reason that we have that, first of all, you don't want to just end the page without anything. You always want to let people know, all right, what else can I do here? And so the footer is usually the place where you answer those questions, right? It's where people will look at what else is on this website, right? Now, it's also, so that's where you're going to put almost every single page that's on the website in terms of high level. Of course, if you have hundreds of blog posts or something, even if you have hundreds of products, you're not going to put it there, but the category. But on a high level, you're going to showcase all the pages over there. And that's also very good for Google in terms of SEO, because that's essentially what Google calls a sitemap. Like, what are all the pages? Sitemap, just like we've mentioned, the structure of the website, this is essentially a visible place for Google to understand the sitemap and all the pages, master pages on this website. This is also the place where you'll probably add the privacy link, terms and condition, all of that kind of stuff. Social media link, that's also the place to put it. Probably not on your top navigation as some people do. And if you have any other calls to actions, such as, secondary, such as joining a mailing list or something like that, sometimes that would also appear in the footer. Okay, so at this stage, you've decided what content should be on the website, and you've actually went down and structured it and drew a sitemap. Basically, information architecture is done, content strategy is done. You're now moving to the phase of developing the actual content. And that is something that a lot of designers struggle with. I would hear all the time, they're saying, oh, my clients would not send me the content. They do not write the text. They did not send me the images. I'm stuck. I can't move forward. It's very frustrating. So what I suggest as a first step, I always suggest for you to do the heavy lifting for them. Your clients will always be busy, and it's always much harder to create something from scratch versus saying fixing something or improving something. So if you do the heavy lifting for them, if you create the 0 to 1, you will write, the initial titles and initial text and even put placeholder images, then it would be very easy for them to say, no, I don't like this title, or change the word there, versus writing everything from scratch. Also, it will enable you to move forward with the project and only say, all right, you need to approve this, but I'm basically done with my work, right? And you can't wait for them to send you the context, because you won't be able to design without actual text and images. I mean, you can't really do a good design when you're only working with lorem ipsum and you don't know how many words you have and how much text you have. So I do suggest you always do the heavy lifting for them. After you do this, you send it for them either for approval or just for collaboration, and you tell them, here's how it looks right now. You're welcome to edit this, and it's great to, if you're using a collaborative tool like Figma, you can give them access to it and they can edit the copy themselves even before it goes on the actual website. So because I'm telling you that you should probably write at least the first draft of the website. By the way, you can also hire somebody to do it. If you don't want to do it yourself, you can always hire, but I do think that it's once you get into the habit, you'll get better at it, and it's worth doing it yourself. So I want to give you some notes on writing for the web. We don't have like a full-on copywriting module here, but I do want to give you some notes about writing for the web. So first of all, I want you to remember that on the web, people don't actually read, they scan, they skim. So you need to plan for that. You need to consider this. How can I cram in as much information as I can, so that when they are actually scanning just the titles, just a few words here and there, they're still going to understand what I want them to understand. Now, one way to make it easier for people to consume stuff is, separating the paragraph and writing shorter paragraph versus just putting a huge chunk of text. When you see this huge chunk of text, that is actually intimidating. You need to consider people are busy, people don't have time. When they see something like this, they are intimidated. When you break down the paragraph into short paragraph, at least they can skim, they can read the first few words of each paragraph and see if that's what they're looking for, and it's actually helping them to better understand what's on the website. Now, headlines are 80 cents on the dollar, meaning those are the things that are most probably going to be read. Like 80% of the time, people are just going to read the headlines. So put your efforts into creating good headlines. The paragraph is way less important. So just put your main efforts into the actual headlines. And of course, if you can use sub-headlines, that would also make things more scannable. If you can break things down into bullet lists or lists in general, that would also make things way harder to consume and scan. If you can make a text in general shorter by not using all of these purposeless words, that would make the text shorter, increasing the chance of people actually reading the text. Now, you want to remember that people are visiting a website because they have some kind of a problem that they need fixed. And if you can write explaining the problem and how the problem is solved, that would resonate with people. So try to write to actually talk and solve and talk about the problem and show the solution of the actual problem. And something super, super important in general at all times, you don't want to talk a lot about you. You mostly want to frame the copy as this is about you. This is how we're helping you, because people care about themselves. They don't really care about you. It's like Seth Godin, one of my favorite quote is, the only emails I like are me mails, right? Emails about me. I don't care about you. I only care about me. So this is very true to every type of writing, specifically on the web. Once you're done writing, do your proofreading, right? am so bad at this. You want to make sure you eliminate grammars. You want to add a little bit of polish, no errors. I use Grammarly all the time. There's other tools, but you want to make sure that you have something like this on your computer. You want to make sure you run through this before you send the text. That being said, I always tell my clients, please proofread the copy yourself and approve it before we go live. I might have errors. I always say this to them because I want to move the responsibility, the final responsibility, to them on checking that the text actually represents them. Actually, I'm not a writer unless if I hire a proofreader or an actual writer, then the responsibility is on him. But if I did this as a favor, as a heavy lifting, which is what I suggested earlier, then you want to move the responsibility to them. I am not like a full-on copywriter, so I don't take the responsibility on the text. I want you to review this and approve it. All right, let's jump into a demo and I'll show you how I'm creating a sitemap for potential clients. Okay, so in this example, I want to create a sitemap for an antique e-commerce shop. Of course, as always, I'm going to do this way too fast, but you'll get the hang of it. I'll start off with my ideas, right? This is my prep. So an antique e-commerce shop, what would it be? So first of all, of course, they're going to have product pages, right? It's an e-commerce shop. What else are they going to have? They're probably going to have a homepage, right? They're probably going to have, but what needs to be on the homepage? So let's think about that. First, they might want to have something like featured, product, something that's new, maybe. They probably need to have categories, right? They might have, and then they have product pages. What else might an antique e-commerce store have? In this case, let's say I know them and the fact that they are an antique shop, they want to really showcase and be proud of the customers that they haven't bought their product. So maybe this company wants to have our customers just to show their customers happy with their product, so they might have our customers section. They probably have testimonials. They probably need to have, because this is an antique e-commerce, how we ship, right? We need to know how are they going to take care of these antiques while they ship them. What else might they have? Testimonials, we said maybe that's reviews or something like that. What else might they have? How we ship. Maybe they have something like a vision. Maybe they have something like how we find our rare products. What else might they have? All right, let's use this as kind of like my first idea, and I would probably go ahead and take of course I didn't do a research, and so you should probably do your research and everything that we've covered so far, but let's assume this is my prep and these are my ideas. I'm going to take them and we're going to share them together with my clients, perhaps on this particular Notion page as well, because it's going to be easy to brainstorm. And based on this, we can start actually doing the, what is the structure. And this is kind of like trying to do visually on the page here, the cart sorting thing. So let's see what goes together. Feature products, and maybe testimonials, and also maybe how we ship, probably also about us, right? About us, is stuff that can go into the homepage. So I'm gonna say home, and in the home, we're going to have featured product, and then we also going to have, we're gonna showcase the categories in the homepage. We're gonna show testimonials on the homepage, and then actually maybe how we ship is something that is important enough to go on something like an about page. So we might have I'm going back into the original hierarchy. So this is about page, and in the about page has the vision and has who we are, like about us, and then we have how we ship here, how we ship, and then of course in the categories, so we need to have basically a category page, category, and in a category we of course have the product page. By the way, under a product page we probably have a checkout page. Yeah, okay, so I think that is kind of but one thing to note though is that these are probably sections within the home section. So this is one page, but here this is not really a section, this is actually a sub page. So let's assume we've brainstormed this with them, we've made the decision that this is the content and this is the main structure. I would then go ahead to just visualize this to make this easier to see in terms of structure on using a sitemap. So we'll have a home page. Let's see what pages do we have here. Basically in terms of pages we have home, right? Then we have, depending on how many categories we have a category 1 with product 1, and then of course if this is a big e-commerce you're not going to list all of the products, but this is basically the page underneath it. So I'm just going to write category because there might be a lot of categories, similar categories, and then product also. I'm going to use this to know that there's a lot of them. And then on top of this, we're going to have something like the about page. And then after the about page, we also have, in what we've drawn, that is basically the structure, right? So that might be, you can make this, pretty with something like this, just to showcase, let's make this bigger, just to help the clients visualize the structure here. And then also you might want to, based on if you want to, you might want to just create the sections or the content that is included in, for example, the about page. So we have the vision, about us, and how we ship. You might want to put that here, something like this, just to clarify what content goes in this page. And you can do this for the home page as well. This is not mandatory. Usually, the sitemap would only create the main pages, but this is also valuable to understand later how to structure each page and what content you then need to go ahead and develop. I'm not going to go into content development in this demo, but I think you've got the gist of it. All right, so let's wrap this up. What I want you to remember and what I want you to think about when you're finishing the content stage of your design project is the website has a content that actually helps it to achieve the goal that you've set up together with your clients? And is the content structured in a way that makes it easy for the users to find what they actually need? And the third one is the content actually optimized for people to consume it the way people consume texts and images on the web? I want you to think about these three things, and I will see you on the next video.